Why did you do that? I don't know. Well, you know better than to do that, don't you? I know. So why did you do it? I don't know. Is that familiar to anybody? We know things intellectually and verbally and consciously. We have conscious awareness around things, yet we sometimes behave in a completely opposite way that doesn't always serve our best interests. It was interesting, actually. We did a rehearsal here 2 weeks ago, and when I said, why did you do that? Marcus said to me, make sure there's no kids sat down there. You terrify them. So what we're going to do today is just really explore 2 4-stage models around, one is around conscious awareness, levels of masteries, and the other one is around various states that we all live in. But first, let me just give you a little bit of background about myself. I was born and raised in Doncaster. Sounds like one or two of you were as well. So I was brought up right opposite a pub called the Wheatley Hotel on Thorne Road. Anybody know it? Anyone got drunk in there? I know I certainly did. Very handy place to be when I got into my mid to late teens. But my formative years were spent around the corner in Wheatley Hills on Grove Hill Road, if anyone knows that. Yeah, just behind there. And the reason that we moved to Thorne Road is after when I was 7 is because my mum was expecting my sister, and we needed another bedroom. So what I'm going to do is just take you a little insight into my upbringing, and I'm going to use, this segues very nicely, the subject of money, because we all use it, right, on a daily basis. We can all relate to it, to see how our belief systems and our paradigms are formed. Anyone know what a paradigm is? Yes? Well, I had the privilege to be mentored and to work with Bob Proctor, if anyone's familiar with him. And he used to say a paradigm is a mental program which has almost exclusive control over our habitual behavior. And here's the thing. Almost all our behavior is, guess what? Habitual, right? So I want you to picture little Steve in Grove Hill Road in the late 1960s or early 70s. Sat around the dinner table with mum and dad. Now, we were just an ordinary family. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor. My dad worked at International Harvesters. Does anybody remember that? On Wheatley Hall Road. It's not there anymore. It's full of housing estates or something like that. And my mum worked at Peggler's down at the bottom of Car Hill. And her best friend at work was one of Doncaster's favourite sons' mums, Kevin Keegan, footballer. Mrs. Keegan was the cleaner there at Peggler's, so she was a good mate of my mum's there. So there we are, sat around the table, having dinner, but if anything came up on the family finances side of things, like the car failed its MOT, or there was a need for extra money, then this was a big deal. Can anyone relate to that? Yeah? And my mum got really stressed about this, really worried about it. She'd have her head in her hands. And she'd be like, how are we going to pay the mortgage? You know, oh my God, Paul, can you get any overtime to my dad? That sort of thing. And when you grow up listening to that sort of thing for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, it tends to form your core belief system or your paradigm, your unconscious belief system around money. And by the way, this relates to absolutely everything. So we all have a relationship with money. We all have a relationship with relationships. We have a relationship with our health and nutrition. In fact, just about everything that you can think about, we have a relationship and a belief system around, which operates subconsciously, a bit like a cybernetic system which operates the autopilot on a plane. You're with me so far? Good. Okay. How are we doing, by the way, today? All good? It's been fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And I'm really privileged and honoured to share the stage with the speakers that have been here before me. Absolutely amazing. So what we're going to get into is 2 models of 4. The first one is what we call the 4 levels of mastery or conscious awareness. And the first one of those is what we call unconscious incompetence. What's an unconscious incompetent? Apart from something, a bit of a tongue twister for me to say. Well, it simply means we don't know what we don't know. You're not aware of something. So you've got awareness over here, and you've got its polar opposite, which is ignorance. You're not aware of the fact. Polar opposite of awareness is ignorance. And contrary to that great British phrase which says, ignorance is bliss, I'm here to tell you it's not. It really isn't. Ignorance is another word beginning with B, bondage. Not that type of bondage. The type of bondage which keeps you stuck where you are, spinning your wheels. But if we move up to the second stage of awareness called conscious incompetence, this is now where we become aware of something. And we might want to study it a little bit. We might want to broaden our horizons, take some classes, read some books, do some seminars, spend a year or two getting into it and really getting to know what that topic is, what that subject is. And then we can move up to the third level of awareness, which is called conscious competence. Now we're really aware of something. We know what's going on. We're educated on it. We're more knowledgeable. We're not in that state of ignorance or anywhere near it, but we still have to think about it. So we are consciously competent. But the fourth level is what we call mastery. This is where we become an unconscious competent. An unconscious competent. This is where we do it on autopilot. I'd like to suggest to you that we're all unconsciously competent at breathing, right? We don't think about it. The only time we actually think about breathing is if we get out of breath medically or we exert ourselves running up a flight of stairs, yeah? So I'd like to give you a personal, story about graduating the 4 levels of consciousness. It relates to me personally. So back when I was about 12, I was unconsciously incompetent, in other words, ignorant, about martial arts. And then I saw a film you might have seen called Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee, all about karate and kung fu. And I wanted to be Bruce Lee. So I took karate classes down in Beckett Road. I went 3-4 times a week. I went at weekends when I could. And within about 2 years, 2.5 years, I was almost a black belt. Almost. That's quite a quick time to do that. And anyway, one night I went out into Doncaster in my sort of mid to late teens, and I got involved in a bit of a kerfuffle. And I came second in this kerfuffle. Now, I'm pretty certain that the guy who I came second to, who took me from black belt to almost black eye, well, definitely a black eye, he had never, ever been near to a karate dojo. But I'm sure he'd had more than his fair share of little kerfuffles, right? And so he was operating from a level of unconscious competence where I was still thinking, well, if he does this, do that, and it doesn't work, right? So this is where we're at. And by the way, I just wanted to tell you something. I meant to say this earlier before we go into the next model, is around this thing of money and building the belief systems. Grandma used to come to our house when we lived at Thorn Road every Saturday afternoon. She'd get off the bus at the Wheatley Hotel. She's come from Rosington. Anyone from Rosington? That worked, didn't it? She'd come from Rosington, she'd get off the bus, and she'd watch the horse racing every afternoon with my mum. The ITV7, I think it was, yeah? And woe betide you if you spoke when that horse racing was on, yeah? But in between all of the races during the adverts, all they talked about was money. All they talked about was how everything's gone up. Spuds have gone up on Donny Market. Cauliflowers have gone up. Meat's gone up. So there was this constant talk of lack and limitation. You with me so far? And then Saturday evenings, we used to take Grandma back to Rosington. So, of course, for those of you who know the geography of Doncaster, you've got to go from Thorn Road to Rosington. You've got to go up Bawtry Road, past all the big houses where all the rich folks live. A little 10-year-old Steve in the back of a car sometimes, I'd go, oh, Mum, look at that house. Is that a Rolls Royce on the driveway? My mum would invariably say something like, it'll be like my dad said, there'll be bloody crooks. So looking back and joining the dots up, like Steve Jobs says, which is the only way you can probably, a bit like a remote viewer, see what the talk was around money, successful, wealthy people, around my mum's dinner table in the 1930s and early 1940s. She was born in 35, same year as Elvis. Throwaway fact there. The next model, 4 states that we all live in. This is something that I learned from a very close friend of mine, Peter Sage, who teaches this in huge detail. We haven't got time for that now, but I'm going to quickly run through it for you. The first state is what we call to me. Anybody read the Celestine Prophecy? Amazing book. You have. Great. Congratulations. Amazing book. Mid-90s, spiritual book by a guy called James Redfield. He refers to the to me state as the victim drama. So when we live here, guys, this is where everything happens to us. We are the victims. Everything happens to me. The whole world is against me. There's a great big global conspiracy on to do me down. Anybody know anyone like that? A friend, of course, yeah? When we have an awareness around this, we can say, you know what, screw this. I'm going to make things happen. And we move into a state called by me. Now, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of successful, go-getting people live in the state called by me. And by me means, very simply, if it's to be, it's up to me. I'm going to make it happen, regardless. The whole world is going to stop if I stop. These people work 28 hours a day. They're not very good at delegating, typically. They work 8 days a week and they feel guilty when they have holidays. Oftentimes, they become very successful. But, guys, when they get to the top of Success Mountain, sometimes they don't like the view. Sometimes they've sacrificed relationships, marriages, friendships, health even, just to get there because they've been living in a very high state of stress. Anybody know anyone like that? Yes or yes? The third state, a little bit more chilled, a little bit more relaxed. It's called through me. This is where we still do the work, because to get heat out of the fire, we got to put the wood in first. But we do the work, we delegate, and then we trust in the process. We trust that the universe will bring us back what we've put out there. You with me? And we live a lot more relaxed, less stressful life. I would recommend something like around about 50, 60% by me. Let's get it done, and then just put it out there and trust in the process that things will work, because they invariably do work out. 99% of the things we get stressed and worried about never happen. Agreed? The fourth state, which I will probably never get to, is called as me. This is the state where Zen Buddhist masters and people like that, they're totally connected to the mind, body, and spirit, totally connected to the universe. They can make things levitate. They're a bit like Yoda from Star Wars, these people. Yeah? So I'll probably never get there. But that's those 4 states of being. So in sort of leaving you with a few thoughts today, I'd really like to encourage you, if you found this interesting, thought-provoking, you may be on this sort of journey of personal development, personal growth yourself. But if you find it interesting, there's so many great resources on YouTube. Hell, I've even got a YouTube channel. And you can read books, take seminars. There's a lot of good free resources. But explore it with a positive and optimistic outlook. Expect the good and you'll find it. Because everybody in this room is positive and optimistic, aren't we, yeah? Yes? Yeah. So I'm going to leave you with a famous story. This is a story about 2 people. One of them is called a pessimist, and the other one is called the optimist. And there they were, sat there one day, having the argument as to whether, you know what's coming, don't you? As to whether the glass was half full or half empty. Can I ask you, is the glass half full or half empty? Sorry, I can't hear you. Half full. Of course it is, because we're all positive, optimistic people. Anyway, they were having a proper old ding-dong this day about whether this glass is half full. The optimist is saying, look, it's half full. Can't you see it? And the pessimist saying, no, it's half empty. Are you mad? And they were really getting into a heated argument. They were almost coming to physical blows. And that black eye we talked about earlier, yeah? But on this day, which was a hot day like we've had recently, there was another guy who entered the fore. And this guy was called the opportunist. And the opportunist saw what was going on, and he'd just come in from outside, and he was really thirsty. And so he came up to the table while these two were having their ding-dong, and they didn't even notice him. And he picked up the glass of water, and he drank the whole lot, and off he went. And you know what? They carried on arguing, almost coming to blows. They'd not even noticed that they were now they were now speaking about a glass which was neither half full or half empty. It was most definitely empty. I'm Steve Q. Thanks for listening to my TED Talk.